Controversial moments in anime. There are so many controversial moments in anime that if I were to sit down here and list all of them, we would probably be here for an hour plus. But of course, as you guys can see by the video length, that's not the case. So instead, what I've done today is we're going to be talking about the 10 most controversial moments in anime curated by yours truly in no particular order. Now, of course, this means that I've skipped out on a lot of other controversial moments. So what I want you guys to do in the comment section down below is list some controversial moments of your own and mention if you think that they should be in this list or maybe they are just narrowly missing out on this list basically. Because I skipped out on a lot. Trust me, I looked at some of the most controversial moments that I remembered as well as some that were mentioned by others. And in all honesty, I felt that this list that I've made is pretty much what I would say are the most controversial moments in anime. So I'm curious to see if you guys think that maybe some other moments are more controversial. Now, without further ado, let's get into our first controversial moment, and that is the rejection from ReZero starting life in another world. Yes, this is the infamous rejection when fan favorite Rem got rejected after confessing her feelings to Subaru, and then the ReZero fans, well, I say ReZero fans, Rem fans in particular, which there are many of, took it particularly hard. While some, and when I say some, Emilia fans appreciated the episode's emotional resonance, others were deeply disappointed that Subaru chose Emilia over Rem. And debate about whether he made the right choice or didn't make the right choice, it still continues to this day. That debate is still going on, even after the airing of season 2. And trust me, I know this as a ReZero fan. I've spoken to so many other fans and people will talk about that rejection and the fact that Subaru is a bad character for, rejecting Rem's feelings. So trust me, it caused a lot of controversy and still does to this day. And there is debate, which in my opinion makes it worthy of being on this list. Now, this next one would probably be first or at least in the top 3 if we were actually doing rankings. And yes, I am talking about that opening episode from Goblin Slayer. Goblin Slayer, when the episodes didn't air at the time, or well, I should say before the episode started airing, that's a better way of saying it. Before the episode started airing, a lot of people thought Goblin Slayer was going to be a dark adventure fantasy. And when they say dark, they thought, there would be killings and whatnot. The Goblin Slayer doing, well, what it's in his title, slaying goblins, and it would be pretty gruesome, right? But the first episode came and I'll give you guys what I thought when I saw the episode for the first time. I watched the episode, and at the end of the episode, my stomach was queasy. It dropped. I still can't watch that first episode thoroughly without turning my eyes away at a certain point, It was bad, and a lot of other fans found it horrifying as well. Some even shut down their TVs or, their screen when that moment happened because they could not watch it anymore, or they just closed the tab in which they were watching, if they were watching it on a website like Crunchyroll. It was that bad, and it got to the point where Crunchyroll saw the discourse on Twitter and the fact that what people were talking about the moment and stuff, and they added a disclaimer within hours of the episode airing mentioning what happens in the episode basically, and telling people to not watch the episode in case they get a sort of sick feeling when that scene happens. It was that bad. And while some say that the scene was meant to depict the brutality of the goblins, others felt that the scene was just animated purely for shock factor, or, well, the story was there for shock factor because it does happen in the light novel as well. And in my opinion, I think it's a blend of the two, right? One cannot be without the other, basically. So you're depicting the brutality of the goblins, but it's there for shock factor. It's there to be a shocking moment. You wouldn't see that in a first episode necessarily, right? So I think that's the big reason why it was there. Of course, whatever your take on the matter is, this scene definitely left an impression, and it left enough of a controversy across social media. For sure, it was crazy. The next one is Revenge is Sweet, School Days. The final episode of School Days was intense. It was unbelievably intense. We had a teenage girl plunging a knife into her philandering boyfriend's chest, and then another teenager, or teenage girl I should say, lopping off said boy's head and then cradling it in her arm like a baby. Now, obviously, it's extremely dark, right? And of course, it's the final episode, and considering what School Days was, it was intense, but it was like, okay, that's crazy, but okay, it's not the end of the world. It's intense, but it's not the end of the world. But the funny thing, or I should say the crazy thing, I should say, it's not even funny. I don't know why I said it's the funny thing, but the crazy thing was the day before it was supposed to air, a real world crime involving a teenage girl ending her police officer father's life with an axe occurred in Kyoto Prefecture. And knowing that the finale would be taken differently in light of the real world tragedy, TV programs across Japan decided not to air it. It was a major controversy and a crazy coincidence that that happened the day before the episode aired. Honestly, one of the craziest episodes, just amplified by the fact that this crazy coincidence happened as well at the same time. Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. The next is a step too far from Sword Art Online Alicization. In one of the most disturbing scenes from Sword Art Online, and that's saying a lot considering the stuff that's happened to Asuna, Lifa, and many other characters in the series, you know, Rios and Humbert in this episode end up inappropriately touching Ronye and TSA right in front of Yujio's eyes. And though Yujio is able to stop them before it turns into, well, straight up assault, the moment was still considered horrifying enough to be cut from most streaming services. And that's saying a lot. Like I said, considering how much of Sword Art Online actually still airs and the moments that still air, this scene being cut was super controversial, and it was a crazy scene nonetheless. It was unbelievable. It was obviously a lot more darker as well, I would say, compared to the other moments, but the fact that they cut it, not a lot of people know that moment actually happened. The next one on our list is a little bit lighter, thankfully, after the numerous amounts of assault we mentioned as well as murder. This one is actually iconically controversial for all the wrong reasons, and this is The Seven Deadly Sins Season 3. The showdown between Escanor and Meliodas was supposed to be one of the greatest fights the series had to offer, but apparently, well, and clearly, the animators didn't get the memo. In fact, fans were so badly burnt by the poorly done battle that many decided to stop watching the show altogether. The reason, and that many people now know, of course, is for the downgrade in animation was the shift in studios from A1 Pictures to Studio Dean. A1 Pictures gave up the series after seasons 1 and 2 as well as the movie, clearly because the series wasn't doing well under their umbrella, so they decided to hand it over to another studio and just give up on it. And that studio that picked up the anime was Studio Dean. Now, Studio Dean aren't well reputable in the anime industry. They do some decent shows, but they're not well renowned like your UFO Table, your Toei, your A1 Pictures, so on and so forth. They are a mid-ranged anime studio. They've done some good stuff like Konosuba and Rurouni Kenshin, but more often than not, it's always like okay-ish in terms of animation quality. But the one thing that made this worse was the fact that Studio Dean decided to outsource most of the anime to another studio that was even worse than them. That caused the animation to be even worse than expected and caused some funny imagery from the anime and from the anime itself, and it caused chaos in the Seven Deadly Sins fan base. It was so good. It was too good. The next thing on our list is a step too far from Darling in the Franxx. In episode 14 of Darling in the Franxx, Ichigo tries to stop Hiro from going after Zero 2. She calls Zero 2 a monster, confessing her love for Hiro, and then grabbing his face and kissing him against his will. This was obviously before the tragedy that was post episode 16. The rest of the series just went downhill in general anyways, but this was still when Darling in the Franxx was at its peak. It was revolutionizing the anime industry and the anime community entirely by how popular it was. And then that episode happened, and the chaos and rage it ensued was crazy. Some fans liked the scene because it showed a little bit of emotion and a little bit of, you know, what I would call high school drama effectively in this show, in this mech show. A lot of people hated it. And some people hated it to the point that they started sending death threats to the production team. I don't know why I struggled with that. Death threats to the production team, including Ichigo's voice actor. It was insane. I remember one of the producers actually tweeted out saying how much they liked the episode, and just below that was just a crazy amount of death threats, and it was so bad. I highly do not condone the actions that happened that day. And honestly, I would say do not do that. Please, these guys put their heart and soul into producing these anime, and there are going to be story beats that people don't like, but they're there to progress the story, develop the story, make it more interesting. Do not send death threats. It's not right. It's not right at all. Please, guys, come on now. At least have some courtesy for these guys that are working their asses off basically to produce anime for us. All right, the next one on our list is the infamous light show from Pokemon. Now this one is actually really well known. I think this is probably one of the most controversial episodes because of course, one, it's Pokemon, and two, it's memorable. It's so old that I think it's approaching its 25th anniversary later this year. This episode of Pokemon aired on Japanese television on December 16, 1997. So yes, it'll be reaching 25 years in December, and never again after that. That's because the flashing lights depicted in this episode triggered seizures and resulted in 685 Japanese children being hospitalized. The show was then taken off the air for 4 months and never returned to public broadcast. The fact that this was Pokemon that did that was crazy, in all honesty. And the fact that, of course, a lot of children got hospitalized because of it is unbelievable as well. Obviously, they took the right decision in just dropping the episode entirely and making sure that future episodes wouldn't be the same by, taking it off air, getting stuff sorted out, and then re-airing the, season slash series. I think it was a good decision for Pokemon, but it was definitely controversial and is still controversial to this day. People remember it vividly, or will always remember it for being that episode that never aired, basically. This next one was a little bit interesting. The one who got away from Erased. In Erased, most of the series is based around Satoru trying to save and becoming friends with an abused young girl, Kaio. At a certain point, he becomes indisposed, and in the future, it is revealed that she married one of his other friends. I mean, you can tell that's just going to cause a lot of chaos in a weeb community, in all honesty. I still remember the chaos and the memes that ensued after that. There are memes about Erase still to this day as well. The disappointing ending after that as well for Erase was just as bad. And I know a lot of people felt Kaio should have had to wait for him like a dutiful doorpost and whatnot, but she shouldn't have. I'm plain and simple, she shouldn't have. But fans were definitely perplexed and still are to this day about the sudden veer away from what was seen as the main ship. And it caused chaos. And it still does. It still causes a lot of memes. And, a lot of people mention Erased every single time something funny happens when it comes to the main ship. So it's very, very funny in that regards, but it is definitely controversial as well. This next one, I hate to say this title because I know I'm going to get clipped for it. Incest is Wincest? Oremo. Yes, Oremo. Now, trading tongues with your sister while leaving a trail of broken-hearted girls in your wake, it sadly is a standard in this day and age, in this subgenre. And while fans weren't exactly pleased about Kirino being the one to steal Kyosuke away, at the very least, it was still within the realm of cringy anime romance that we had all come to expect. But deciding to marry her and go all in, well, that was a bridge too far. This wasn't so much a comedy plus heaping pile of innuendos. This was a full-on support for a blood-related bed breaking. And honestly, the chaos it has caused in the community and the fact that people just want to forget about Oremo says a lot about the series itself and the fact of what happened at the end. Now, speaking of endings, let's talk about one of the most controversial endings of all time. The original ending of Neon Genesis Evangelion. Evangelion. Now, as a big fan of Evangelion, somebody who rates it as their favorite anime of all time, this one was chaotic. That's the best way to put it. You managed to enrage your fan base to such an extent that, I should say, that you succeeded in earning yourself the rarest of distinctions that only a select few series gain when their watchers become obscenely irate. Death threats. Yes, of course, as per usual, like we said with a show above like Darling in the Franxx, this one was also a case where the creator, Hideki Anno, received death threats. And yes, the folks over in the Land of the Rising Sun lost the plot a bit when they discovered the end of the show was just Shinji caught between a mental breakdown and a philosophical reflection, complete with major budget cuts. It's not exactly what everybody hoped for, and while I personally liked it, it was memorable in its own kind, a lot of people didn't see it that way. And of course, this unpopular ending would then be rectified with the release of End of Evangelion. So it kind of got fixed, but of course the original ending is still present in everybody's mind. Now, of course, these are the 10 controversial moments in anime I feel that deserve its own pedestal, basically, and they deserve to be in like a cupboard hidden away for people to remember effectively. But I want to see what you guys have to say down below in the comments section, because I feel like there are some that maybe I might have missed out on, but I want to see what you guys would have to say as well. I'm very curious. I'm very, very curious. Of course, it has been Galeriot. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did. Subscribe to the channel. Like I said, comment down below what do you guys think about this list and any moments you think should have been in this list. And I will probably do a follow-up video on this one if you guys leave enough comments. So be sure to leave comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy, everybody. Bye-bye.